All right. Thank you for tuning in once again to Missing Pieces. I'm Benji Wham, pastor of the Refuge Church in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. And I'm joined once again by my beautiful wife, Patty Wham. We welcome you once again, honey. And welcome you. Thank you for tuning in. Want to encourage you, share this, okay? Let somebody know about it. I guarantee you there's somebody that needs to hear this, whether they're married, whether they're going to be married, in your relationships, in your dealings on your job, the things you deal with day to day. Everybody deals with the stuff we're talking about, especially today. Today, it'll be a good one as we're talking about communication. Communication today. So it's going to be real good. And like we told them last week, we try to keep it as real as possible. I think if we're going to fight on set, this might be the one. So we'll see. Hopefully we won't, but hey, if it's for the greater good, that's good. But today we're talking about communication. Last week we talked about expectations. And we touched on that it's okay to have expectations. It's all right. That there's nothing wrong with having expectations. God has expectations of us. God wants us to have expectations of Him because that shows our faithfulness and that everything, that we trust Him to do what He needs to do. So there's nothing wrong with having expectations, but making sure that those are realistic, that they're Christ-centered, and that also we're not being unrealistic, but we're not expecting something of someone we don't expect of ourselves. Today, we're going to talk about communication. Let's just start off. I personally think that communication is one of the most important things when it comes down to any kind of relationship that you're involved in anywhere.
I agree.
And I would say that it's important for success. But oftentimes you can point at it as the cause of failure, because I believe I think many people struggle in this area. So I guess your thoughts as we're getting into it, as we're starting out, when we talk about communication and the importance of it, kind of what do you think as far as communication and the whole idea of it's a key to success, but it also can be, you can point the finger at it as a reason for failure and a lot of times in the relationships we're in.
Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I know, every argument is a breakdown of communication, or, if we're excited about something and wanting to share it, there's communication involved with that. How are you going to receive it? So there's a give and take, I guess, in
Very
communication. Good. So I'm looking forward to this. I think it'll be a good conversation.
Absolutely.
Of diving into all of those gives and takes and
absolutely
learning more.
I think the thing that's most important in communication, again, any type of communication, is that it must be done openly, meaning that there is communication is allowed to be had, that it's shared, meaning that there is talking, there is listening, and we'll get into the listening part in a little bit. But I think that's so important. I'll kind of start off on my end and kind of talk about, I'll just kind of give you some areas I struggle in. Believe it or not, I'm a very laid back person. Yeah. I think anybody that knows me would agree with that. However, I think what people don't realize about me is my mind is going constantly. It's just, we call it my hamster on the wheel. I'm just constantly in thought, constantly I'm just looking at things big picture. I'm processing, I'm analyzing. It's a strength, but it's also a weakness of mine that I have to kind of manage and be careful of. But I think sometimes one of the things that I have a lot of struggle with, and I say this to Patty, you know, a lot of times is she knows exactly what she wants. You know exactly what you want to say. You're able to put it into words.
When I'm mad.
You're able to put things into words, and you're able to let me know how you're feeling in the moment. Me, I struggle with that because I'm very emotional. And so it's like, and I find a lot of times it's like, when I say I'm emotional, it's like I'm experiencing a plethora of feelings.
Yeah.
But then, so it's like, sometimes I try to really communicate my feelings, but then it's like I say it, then I'm like, well, that's really not how I feel. But then I've offended you.
Right.
I've offended you. And so I think my struggle is I have a hard time putting what I'm feeling into words. And so I think one of the things we have had to work through as a couple is that right there, whereas on my end is because I'm very guilty a lot of times of just going into my shell, going into my cocoon, because I'm trying to process how I'm feeling, because I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to express it. A lot of times we'll get into I guess we'll say fight or an argument or a conversation with some layers to it, and
With passion.
And you know, and I'm saying things, and again, it's like I'm struggling because I'm having a hard time putting into words how I'm feeling, and then I'm kind of digging a ditch with you and spinning my tires.
And it goes both ways. I do that with you too at times, but you're right.
So I think for me, I think for me, one thing that I have tried to learn to do, and it is, again, it's helped me professionally, it's helped me with my friendships, everywhere, because what I was so guilty of, and I've gotten better, I'm not perfect, I still have my moments, but I think what I was really guilty of a long time ago was that I would just bottle all this up, and then eventually it just comes out, and I explode, and I hulk up, and I just kind of let it all loose, and so, but I think what I've tried to work at is in my analyzation, say, okay, why am I feeling this way, and how can I communicate and verbalize it with taking kind of feelings out of it, if that's possible. So how have you learned, I guess two-part question here. How have you learned to work with me in this regard? And then as far as you are concerned, where you're much more in tune with your feelings, how have you learned to communicate and verbalize things with me, taking into account everything I just mentioned?
I think early on, I didn't take anything into account. I felt like I came into this, you came into this marriage, I came into this marriage, and we're gonna hash it out, and we're gonna get somewhere tonight, kind of thing, like just button heads, not physically or any, just like, when I say that, I mean just dumping everything out there with no regard to your emotions, how it would affect you, how you would think I meant it. I would not pay any attention to that. I would just and then I think after I did that, and it would take us so long to work through everything I had dumped out. I think that was my learning curve. I think seeing that and realizing you say this all the time, we're on the same team. Yeah. You started saying that. When you said that, it helped me understand you're not my enemy. You're not my enemy. We're one. We're married. We're one now. So we're on the same team. We're working together. So how can we avoid this days of lingering emotions and trying to repair? Why do we have to blow holes in our ship? Why can't we just address things maturely, and talk about it, not if raising voices, not yelling at each other, but let's just dial it down. Let's just talk. And I think that's been very changed. Like I'll say, it changed us.
And I think that was something that I heard, and it really, and I've tried to apply it not just with you, but again with everything. Because I really believe that. I really believe when communication is right and we're able to talk and we're able to kind of sift through some things and kind of lay some emotions aside, oftentimes we find, even though in our disgruntledness and our analyzation, we like to think that we're on two different pages, but oftentimes we find that we are. We want the same thing. We just have different ways of going about it and just learning to row the boat together.
That's right.
Figuratively.
Yeah. I mean, that's true anywhere. Like you said, work. I mean, you can apply that to anything, really. You have a common goal and objective, and all these different personalities are trying to accomplish something in their own way. But as a married couple, as a partnership at work or things like that, you have to learn that you're on the same team, row together. That's good.
Absolutely. And I think again too, one big part of it is listening, and I think that has been a challenge for me because again my mind is going constantly, and so it's trying to jump to conclusions or get on the defensive or I'm comparing this situation to past situations, and so listening. I do want to say this before we really get into the listening. I think for me, I'm proud. Please know my heart. I'm proud of. I said this on the last a week ago when this aired. I'm very proud of my heritage. Yes, my parents divorced. They both remarried. A lot of great things came out of that. I believe God at His word when He says, all things work for the good of those who serve Him, and I believe God can use any situation for good. But I grew up part of the family. Part of my family dynamics was we loved hard. And we loved hard, and so there was some very passionate arguments. There were some very hurtful things said. There were, and again, both I'll just say that a lot of, because of remarriage, there was a lot of baggage, perhaps, on all ends that were brought into it, and things that had to be dealt with. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong. Of course, that's going to happen.
Right.
But
every family deals with that today.
Yes, I think there was a lot of trust, that issues that had to be worked with. But things like divorce. I mean, it seemed like divorce was threatened a lot, and there was just a lot of things that were really verbalized a lot. So I think for us. And again, it's not that we're better than that. It's just we learned some things from the homes we came out of, and we said, you know what, we're not bringing it into this home. So I think for us, we have tried very hard to make sure that divorce is not an option. It's not on the table.
Right.
I heard a pastor say one thing, once quitting is not an option, it makes everything else much easier. And I think we found that to be true.
Right.
So we just take that off the table. But I think, too, for me, part of why I have a hard time verbalizing things is I'm trying not to let my emotions rule me, because I think that's the thing when we do the love hard thing, some very hurtful things can be said. There's some folks that I've known my whole life that love me. I know they love me, and again, they love hard. So they love me with their emotions. They love me in every area. But I can still recite to you things they said. I've forgiven them. It's good.
Right.
But it's still there. And so learning, again, just learning, it's just so important, learning to communicate and trying to just really kind of put things into words in a constructive way, in a way to build something up. Another thing that I want to point out, I'm talking a lot.
You're doing well, though. You're hitting all the important things, I feel like.
One thing that I try to look at both in my dealings with you, family members, church members, as I lead volunteers, staff members, everybody I come in contact with is a construction opportunity. It's a construction opportunity. Oftentimes in construction, something is going to have to be cleared, something is going to have to be taken away so that construction can take place.
That's good.
But the thing is, am I constructing something or am I raising something? A raise is just a demolition. It's destroying something. What I'm trying to do, my goal is I'm trying to rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm trying to take what's there and make it better. And I want to add to that person's life. I want to add that. I want to help them. And so if I'm allowing how I'm feeling, my emotions and all of those things, what am I doing? I'm destroying that person. And that's what it's something we got to be careful of.
That's right.
Is there anything you want to add or tag on to that?
No, I think that's great.
So listening, being a good listener, again, and I said it a while ago, one of my challenges is again turning off my brain so I can actually listen and again removing emotion out of it.
I have a story I want to share.
Oh, no. Here we go.
This is a good one. It goes right along with listening. Benji and I don't know how long we had been married, but it had been a little while. And I just poured my heart out to him, and all of a sudden, I hear him humming. I hear, in the middle of my conversation that I thought we were having.
Don't do that.
Boy, I got hot. But I don't even remember what I was talking about, but I remember you humming in the midst of that. And I hate to say it, I think it happened twice. But I share that because it's funny. It's lighthearted. We can laugh about it now. But that goes to show that your mind is always working. And like you were dialed into what I was saying, but your humming showed me otherwise. Like it told me that what I had to say wasn't important. That's not what you were meaning or thinking, but that's how it made me feel. So I think maybe that can open up the dialogue between us to go where we need to with
as we're talking about listening.
Yeah.
How would you describe when you feel like you're being listened to? And may I say this? My wife, she is amazing, but she had a nickname growing up called Power Mouth Patty, and so for me, when I talk to you, you're gonna get bullet points, okay? You're gonna get highlights, and I'm gonna try to get to the point the best I can. I may add more as I get excited or worked up, but I'm gonna try to give you the main points.
Do not ask me for a summary. I fail at summaries.
She's gonna tell you every single. I mean, she is very much in the details, okay, and most females are, and so you know, it's funny for me. I've never actually been diagnosed with ADD, but most people that know me say, "Oh yeah, you got it. Right. You have attention deficit disorder." So for me, that's I had to really learn. I had to really learn you in that regard, and you know, learn to listen, to be dialed in, to listen to every detail, and learn to embrace that and enjoy it. Right. But how do you feel like you're being listened to, or when do you know? You know, when do you know you're being listened to, or?
Well, I can say this. I think I know I'm being listened to by the way I feel. I don't know if that even makes sense, but I feel valued. I feel like I have some sort of importance to you, when I'm being listened to. I don't know how to say that any
No.
other way.
I got you.
So,
So and I think that is important because again, we all want to be valued, and everybody wants to know they're important. So I think I show you that you are important and you are valuable to me by the way by listening to you.
and I think, life is busy for everyone, and we get caught up in things, and sometimes we just have a quick little moment to connect. It's through that, your tone, your look, that, are you listening? Are you hearing what I'm saying? That, a lot of that is rooted in
Yeah.
there.
And I think too, it's learning. I think one thing that's real valuable in that is learning to embrace those moments, and be in that moment because, I'm on the phone a lot, constantly. I mean, my phone is just constantly ringing. I'm constantly getting texts. So I find myself a lot. I'm trying to be in the moment that I'm in, but at the same time too, I know, okay, I got to get from this phone call because I got another one coming up, and I've got this meeting happening, and I got to do this or I got to do that. And so, learning to be in the moments I'm in, not waste away the moments I'm in, and embrace it, because I think with you, one thing that I have had to learn is instead of being like, okay, come on, Patty, get to the point, or I know where you're going. I think learning to embrace, because I think some of our most comical moments and some of the most precious moments have come from, a funny thing that was said, or a funny story, and I think if I'm not listening and I'm not in that moment and I'm trying to rush you along, I miss that, and I think there's just something very, something very precious about that, and learning to appreciate that, and being in the moment. It's the whole bloom where you're planted, and learning to embrace the things you're in and not wish them away.
And we're talking a lot about you and about what your tendencies are, but the flip side of that, you're laid back, but let's go, let's fit it in, let's get it done. And so I have to really hit the brakes and tell myself the same thing, like, hey, he's talking to you, and you might want to get this done right now, but you need to drop it and listen, pay attention, don't miss the moment. So it's definitely a two-way street, and I think it's good. It's kind of like we balance each other out, I guess you could say.
So I hope this is helping you. Anything else you want to tag with anything we've said so far?
I don't think so. I think it's important just to be in, like you said, in the moment, be an attentive listener. If you've got background noise going, and I know he's ADD, and sometimes it's helpful to have something going in the background, because if something comes in to the room, a child or something, then his attention's diverted to that. So maybe, just knowing your audience and being able to, I think that's helpful too. I guess that's all I can throw out there.
I think, a while ago you alluded to it. You were talking about how one thing that we've learned is to say, okay, hey, we're on the same team here, and remind ourselves of that we ultimately want the same thing.
Right.
Is how important is it to share positive feelings? Instead of just, because we're so, in our society, and we're always so geared on fixing things, and always so geared on the negative, and it's so easy to do. But how important is it to share positive feelings, and just letting somebody know, hey, I love you.
Huge. I feel like within our home, that's the one place where we can let our hair down and be our complete selves. That's where having open communication that you mentioned earlier is so vital. You have to have that one place to just be your complete, total, honest self with your spouse. And so I think that's great. But also, if you've had a rough day, who's going to build you back up before you go back out to face that, that obstacle, that whatever it is, if you feel like you've been torn down, who's going to build you back up? Your spouse, the word of God, so those are your two things you need to run to. And as Christians, we need to go to the Bible first, seek God, pray about it, and then we need to come to our spouse and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. How can you help me with that? Or if you don't have the words for it, if I come in and I'm just weepy or crying, you need to know, I need to tell you, listen, it's nothing you've done. I don't know what's going on, but I just need a hug or whatever, that's communication too. So,
and I think part of that, when you said this, it just made me think about it. I think one thing people in general, I know I do, in my relationship with you, in my relationship with people I work with, both those I work for, both those that maybe work under me or volunteer for me, I'm realizing more and more things are so much better when people genuinely feel appreciated.
And yes, I agree.
And I think showing that appreciation, and we can show it in so many ways, and I know that's something I could do so much better at. But I think just learning to, hey, I appreciate you, I value you, because it's amazing. I look back, I've been involved in so many things in my life, and some of the things that I was involved in that were more successful and did really well and got a lot out of the folks that were involved in it, a lot of good came out of them. I think those were the people that really felt appreciated. They felt valued, and they went over, above, and beyond. Why? Because they felt important. They understood what they were a part of, and they wanted to be their very best because they felt appreciated and valued.
That's right. I think that's great. Just like, you're talking, I'm thinking, who likes to do chores? I certainly don't. I know you don't care to. I mean, it's a chore because it's a chore. You have to do it, and you get it done. So, but I say that because how many times as a married couple are you doing a chore and you wish you were doing something else, but before you can move on to something else, the chore has to be done. Well, if we're going out as a family and you're busy doing something and I'm over there doing my chore and I know I've got to do 2 more chores, I'm getting frustrated because I see you're not doing a chore. Here I am, let's say I'm scrubbing a dish, whatever the case may be. Like I said earlier, I don't want to tear you apart and then have days worths of rebuild. I want to make sure that I'm choosing my words carefully in the moment, and I'm saying, if I'll catch myself thinking, I didn't like the way that his tone in that, or something, and then I'm able to say, you know what, honey, you probably didn't mean it this way, but when you said that, it really made me feel this way, I like to use the I feel statements a lot, to kind of shift it so you don't feel like you're being attacked by me in the moment, but that you're hearing the way it's affected me. Does that make sense?
You touched on something. Tone. That's a big one with us.
It is. It is.
I'll let you talk about tone.
Okay. So, yeah, I really don't know what to say other than tone is a big one for us. And I tell you all the time, like, your tone, the way you said that, like, I just didn't like it.
And I think anybody that knows me, any of the relationships I'm in will tell you, I'm very laid back, and I'm usually like this.
Yeah.
But again, sometimes it's difficult for me because my mind's all over the place and going, it's difficult for me sometimes to verbalize what I'm saying. So it's like when I'm saying it, I'm in deep concentration. So my face is kind of at a scowl, and my tone's a little different, and I'm coming across like harsh,
like mad, yeah.
Or I mean, even sometimes people will see me and I'm walking around and they're like, "Man, are you okay?" Because it's just I'm like, I'm just thinking it's painful for me, and so So yeah, just learning to soften that a little bit and just take that moment of, okay, just, I think one thing that's helped me is just, and I say this to a lot of people, particularly folks that have a hard time with temper or speaking out of emotion, is just check yourself right before you say something. Like,
Yeah.
how am I coming across? Have a scowl on my face? What's my tone? Because sometimes when I do that, that's the difference between the conversation going well and the conversation being a disaster.
Right. That's
So,
good.
Anything else you want to tag on to that?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. And the last thing would be nonverbal communication. I have certain things I say, and this is one that I believe in, is everybody is saying something without saying anything at all. You may say everything is fine and everything is good, but I'm watching you rolling your eyes. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about people in general. I'm watching you rolling your eyes. I'm watching you slam things. Your Facebook posts, I may be able to kind of read the line between the lines of what you're saying. So I think it's, and again, I'm very analytical. I watch people. I analyze people. So I observe people. So I think so many times it's just better if we could just learn to speak it, because our body language says it for us.
That's right.
Have you encountered that, or is this something that, how have you learned to cope with this? I would say with you, again, you, particularly early on in our marriage, this was not an issue for you. When you were upset, I knew it.
Yeah.
And you told me and you got there. I think through the years, you've learned to kind of, I think maybe you bottle it up more than you used to, but then I start picking up on, something's wrong,
Yeah. I think I do bottle it up maybe a little bit, but I think I've learned to temper it more.
Yeah.
I've tried to, believe it or not, I might talk a lot, but I think you've helped me with communicating. Like, what am I saying? Not just blah, 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 rambling,
Yeah.
So, I think I do bottle it up, but at the same time, I feel like I'm learning to communicate, and I either identify how I'm feeling and my thoughts, or leave it alone until I can circle back to that and then know what I want to say.
And I think you have helped me tremendously in this, because I'm bad about this. I mean, because again, I go into this, so learning to not just communicate everything nonverbal. Oh, I'm fine, I'm good, but it's
Right.
clear that I'm not, because I'm not saying much, or I'm slamming things down, or I'm taking something out on the kids, and just learning, again, just learning to take time. Okay, what's really going on here? How am I really feeling, and how do I talk about it?
I think that's exactly what I had to do last night, because I was getting kind of frustrated and I couldn't put my finger on why, and you're looking at me like, what's going on? What's wrong? And I'm looking at you like, you should know. But yet I didn't even know. So then I think I ended up leaving the room and then coming back, thinking on it a few minutes, and then coming back, and we met at the door. You remember that? You were coming out of the room and I was getting ready to go in. And I said, let's talk another minute. I think I've got the words for it now. And once I was able to, talk about it, then I could easily move on. And then later that night, it came up again for another reason, but we were able to address it. And I think that's so important, because you're not sweeping it under the rug, and you're not allowing it to build a mountain between the two of you. Absolutely. Or become an obstacle that you're going to trip over.
No, that's very good. And I want to say this in closing. If you look at today's society versus what was popular many, many years ago, I think, when we were growing up, sitcoms were the thing. Now they still are, and there still are shows that everybody likes and we watch or whatever, but I think what's really popular now is reality television, even though it's not necessary. I know it's scripted or whatever, but it's more reality based programming because it's people that we can identify with. It's not. It's more relatable because I think what we used to see was just this image or this portrait that nobody felt like they could live up to, whereas now, you see things that's full of fighting and arguing and emotions and things. You're like, hey, I can relate to that, or this. I feel like I'm watching something in my life, and I'm saying that, and I'm not like saying, hey, if you're fighting and getting into it, go for it. That's not what I'm saying. But I think what I am saying is that we, again, to be communicators, conflict is going to happen. It's inevitable, and it's not always a bad thing. It's not always a wrong thing. The key is how are we able to overcome it? And again, what's the big picture? What are we aiming for? What are we striving for? And what are we overcoming in those moments?
I think it's important, too, to remember that we're not, as the Bible tells us, we're not to speak out of anger, to lash out of anger, act out of anger even. And I wish I could quote that scripture. But anyways, I had that personally not long ago. A few weeks ago, we were somewhere and something happened, and I felt like something more needed to be said when it really didn't. And then after it was all said and done, I was so embarrassed by the way I handled it. It's not that I said anything wrong, but I was angry at the person, and I spoke out of the anger, the emotion I felt, even though I felt like in my gut that I should just keep quiet, So I think it's important in relationships. This was between me and a stranger, but and you were there. But and I felt like anyways, I feel like you have really helped me in that, to see that, that so thank you.
Well, I hope this has helped y'all. I hope you're not looking at us as, we don't want to come across as the couple that has all the answers and has it all figured out. I promise you we don't. And you would not have to be with us very long to recognize we don't. We're just trying to share with you
what works for us.
What's worked for us, how we've learned to communicate with others, and we want to help you, and we want to hear from you. There's an email address right there on the bottom of the screen. You could drop something in the comment line. If you know us personally, feel free to send us a private message or whatever, but get a hold of us. Let us know. We want to know if this is helping you. We want to hear if we're on to something here. Do we need to take some of these, do we need to take it further? Do we need to talk in more depth? Is there something we haven't covered you want us to cover? Maybe questions. We want your questions. Send that to us, because again, we want to help you. Okay, we want to be a resource to you. If you want to give, if you want to sow into the Refuge Murrells Inlet, if you want to sow into this ministry, there's instructions there on the screen on how to do that. We have several different options. Those instructions are there. So please do that. And lastly, share. We do this on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern Time on all of our social media, and all of the options there for viewing are there. Share this. Get this in the hands of people that need to hear it, because again, we just want to we want to help. We want to help, and we feel like that we've tried to identify needs or things that we see based on the people we minister to and have a relationship with. And so we just want to be a resource to you. So anything you want to say in closing?
No.
All right. Well, hey, we'll see you next time. This is Missing Pieces. We love you.